as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. Primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I want to discuss the Rams signing Matthew Stafford to a long-term extension. So we'd heard reports, we'd heard rumblings that Stafford and the Rams might seek a divorce to a certain extent. Stafford might go to the Giants, where I think his brother has been recently hired as a member of the New York Giants. We'd heard other teams, the Steelers. Apparently, my Steelers were interested in Stafford. I would have absolutely welcomed that. How about Matthew Stafford as your bridge to draft a quarterback next year? I'm all for that possibility. That did not come to fruition because we can pull this up here. Because the Los Angeles Rams and Matthew Stafford agreed to an extension, it is signed a long-term extension to coordinator Adam Schefter, and so essentially the first quarterback domino has fallen this offseason. So we'll wait on Sam Darnold. Tomorrow's the franchise tag deadline. Does look like the Minnesota Vikings are going to sign him to that. He is also going to test the open market. Russell Wilson's out there. Aaron Rodgers is out there. We'll see how it all plays out. But Matthew Stafford was the biggest domino to fall to start this free agency, this NFL offseason process. So I want to be fair to Stafford, and that sounds weird, but just follow me, in terms of the discussion around his future, what he provides to an NFL team. Because we can show you his numbers with the Rams. Because just let's show his playoff numbers with Los Angeles Rams. Because Stafford's an excellent playoff quarterback with the Rams. 15 touchdowns, 3 picks. That's a 5-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. That's excellent. Completes 68% of his throws for almost 300 yards a game. Pass rating of 109. He's got a 5-2 record. And of course, his first season as a Ram, 2021, LA won the Super Bowl. So Stafford's a great playoff quarterback. For the record, the Rams, of all the 4 playoff opponents the Philadelphia Eagles saw, they mowed over Green Bay, who was DOA anyway, was in a dogfight with the Rams in round 2. Remember the snowy game, and Stafford had all the turnovers, but somehow Puka Nacua made a big catch, and they almost won the game despite Saquon doing Saquon things. Jalen Carter makes a play. Philly advances. Philly blows the doors off Washington and then embarrasses Kansas City in the Super Bowl 2 weeks later. So Philly ran over everybody except for the Los Angeles Rams. So it was always a weird thing. I'm like, dang, came closer by far than anybody of knocking off the eventual champs, and going to split. Like, well, Stafford's still really good, and McVay and the Les Snead drafting the way he's drafted. The reality of the situation, though, is this. Had Stafford left, because the Giants were kind of the number one team that was on people's radar, is if Matthew Stafford ends up as a New York Giant, folks are talking about, they could be a playoff. Maybe. Malik Neighbors is special, but the offensive line isn't very good. The running game's non-existent. The GM's not that good. I love Dable. It feels like it's kind of run its course with the Giants. The defensive line's excellent. Everything else defensively is terrible. And there's a reason they were in the market for a quarterback to begin with. In this NFL draft, is seeing they obviously have the 3rd overall pick. So maybe, just maybe, might not be as attractive as the LA Rams. You tell me you want to go to the Giants just because they could pay you a little bit more money. In year 17, Matthew Stafford would be in year 17 by that point, age 37. At this point, kind of what I was talking about with Steph earlier. Now, Steph's on a different level, obviously, in his sport, and Stafford isn't his. But we're talking about Hall of Fame stuff here. We're talking about contending for a championship. Giants give you a 0% chance, with no chance whatsoever to compete for a title. Just for a little extra money, which the Rams could still pay you handsomely. It was always a very weird dynamic that I saw going on. So he's back with the Rams. And let's keep it real, as excellent as Stafford is. Number one, I mentioned his age. He's 37 going into year 17, but more so than that, when Stafford was in his prime years, Stafford's at his peak. I mean, all-time, Matthew Stafford is 4th all-time in game-winning drives. So I don't want to make this segment sound like I'm bashing Stafford. I think he's excellent. I think he's still absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, a top 10 quarterback. What was his reputation prior to being a Los Angeles Ram? 0-3 in the playoffs. Couldn't win the big game. Could never beat Aaron Rodgers. Had the game against Dallas. Remember the controversial call. Then their other 2 playoff losses were at Drew Brees and the Saints. And then it was at Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. Like, he's never good in the playoffs. Not that good late in seasons. There were some injury concerns. We understood that Detroit at that point was a poorly run operation. But a lot of blame came on Stafford for how he played in some of those big spots. And then he ends up with McVay, and what do you know? Super Bowl year one, and all of a sudden he's on a potential Hall of Fame trajectory toward the end of his career. Very late Kurt Warner-esque to a certain degree. The Rams, maybe not in 2025, long term they'd have been fine. They probably would have signed Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, hey, maybe Sam Darnold. Any of the three, I guess, at this point, those are the three best remaining free agent quarterbacks. They'd assign them. And I think at this point, Seattle's good. They need a quarterback. They need to draft a guy. The Geno thing is not going to last long term. The Cardinals are a disaster, as they always are. And the Niners just traded Deebo Samuel and might be about to give Brock Purdy a franchise-altering, in a negative way, contract. I still would probably, and you guys know how critical I've been of Aaron Rodgers. Forget off the field. On the field, he's not nowhere near the same player. Sean McVay turned Baker Mayfield's career around. Literally helped turn around the way we see Baker. I've called the LA Rams like quarterback rehabilitation. Okay, make Carson Wentz look good for a start. Jared Goff is a good quarterback who got to a Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams with Sean McVay. This guy makes just about everybody work at that position. The Rams front office, Les Snead. I mean, folks, one of the greatest defensive players of all time retired from the Rams before the start of last season, Aaron Donald. And their defensive line might have actually gotten better. Sorry, dealing with some mic issues. The kid out of Florida State, Jared Verse, who's been excellent. This defensive line, this linebacking core is good. Like, give Les Snead one more draft. He's got Puka Nacua. He's got Kyron Williams on offense. Like, the offensive line is improved. Like this, we thought when the Rams won in 2021, it's like, okay, they're going to take a step back. They're slowly going to. No, Les Snead has just reloaded this thing. So 2025, I think they're absolutely one of the premier contenders in the NFC. Philly's obviously going to be the favorites, as they absolutely should be. They're dominated everybody, and they have the best roster in the league. But Detroit lost coaches. Green Bay, we'll see. Minnesota, what are they at quarterback? Do we trust their quarterback? Darnold, McCarthy, NFC East, Washington, are they ready to take that step yet? I think the Rams at this point are the second. If you take out Philly, Rams are my favorite to win the NFC. If you take out Philly, it's not just because they beat Philly. It's because based on their organizational history, based on the fact that they have a top 3 coach in the league. I'd argue maybe second best to Andy Reid. Les Snead, maybe the best general manager. Look what he's done in the draft. Look at his record. So I think Stafford would have been out of his mind to leave the Los Angeles Rams, and it would have been, I mean, let's be honest, if Stafford goes to the Giants, bombs there, has the long career, the 12-year career in Detroit, where he was always good, he was always talented, he put up numbers, he was clutch, but not in the biggest games. You never could count on that to be great in those big playoff spots. And then, again, we're talking long-term now, and then the Rams have a decent year, make the playoffs with an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson or a Sam Darnold, and then in 2026 they draft a guy and he goes on to be excellent, because that's what Sean McVay does. That's what the Rams do. They rebuild quick. They load their roster, be it draft, free agency, trades. That's what they do. And it would have been, dang, Matt left that just for a little money for the Giants, and the Rams, shocker, continued to dominate, continued to be excellent long-term. So, again, I certainly don't want to sound like I'm bashing Matt. I think he's excellent, but the Rams obviously need Stafford to contend this year. There's no question about that. But after 2025, they would have somehow found a way to rebuild it without question. Whereas Matt, outside of the Rams, and we saw what the market was suggesting, he wasn't really going to contend outside of that. I think if he would end up with my Steelers, I would have called us a potential contender in the AFC. But, Kansas City's still there. Buffalo has the second best QB, in my opinion, Josh Allen. Lamar maybe took a step forward for the Ravens in the playoffs. So Houston, I think Houston could have a really solid season this year if they get the offseason right. So, yeah, this is absolutely Stafford's best opportunity to contend. And as for the Rams, they're in good shape to potentially win the NFC next year. I mean, if you told me to get a Rams-Philly NFC title game, wouldn't be shocked at all. That would be a good one. We saw the divisional playoff game, and that'll be fun to watch. So Stafford, again, we can show his numbers again. Playoffs, he's a great quarterback with the Rams. But a lot of that is McVay. So there you go. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.